or whatever. So if I do that, and I come back later, don't wash my hands, don't change my gloves, and I'm putting sandwiches into bags and handing it out, I'm cross-contaminating. So when you're wearing gloves, gloves is not a safety net for cross-contamination. It can also make cross-contamination worse because we're not changing our gloves and we're not washing our hands. If we're utilizing gloves, gloves can be expensive, but it's a process of taking them off, washing your hands each time. You change stations to work with different types of food. You should have on new gloves and clean hands. And you should also have clean trimmed nails. And I know like a lot of us, especially on our side, we like to wear the nails, acrylics and all those things. When you're handling food, wash your hands. You have to clean underneath the nails. You have to wear gloves to properly handle food because there's times when food can get contaminated by nails, meaning like my acrylic nail can fall off into someone's food that I'm cooking. That would be like a contamination for them. And it can get somebody sick if they end up getting it in their system, or, you know, I don't realize it until later, like, oh, where did my acrylic nail go? Or where, you know, that's why as a food service handler, as you see my hands right now, this is how I work every day. I don't have on nails, I don't have on designer stuff because it cross-contaminates. I don't have on rings, I don't have on jewelry. And normally my hair is pulled back or I wear a hairnet because that's how you protect people who are eating food. And frequent hand washing. Each time you leave a station, you need to wash your hands. There should be a hand washing station, someplace designated for hand washing only. That's not where you're gonna wash your produce, meaning your food, like your vegetables. That's not where you're going to get drinking water from. That area is designated only for hand washing. And that's because we don't want to cross-contaminate. So if you're going to be having a hand wash station, it needs to have paper towels, disposable paper towels, it needs to have soap readily available, it needs to have hot water readily available. You can have sanitizer as well, but those are the things that keep bacteria and germs from infesting our hands and transferring it to people who are serving, because we don't want to do that. And clean attire, like if you're working outside serving food, you have to be clean. You have to make sure the clothing you're wearing is clean. Maybe invest in an apron or something. That way, if there's food that gets on your body, you have the option to change off your apron or do something to keep your clothing clean, because that's even a hazard to people who are basically serving food. Something on your clothing could have fallen into the service area, and now you're serving that to someone who may get sick. So when we're talking about feeding our public health is very important, and hygiene is important. So fresh showers, clean clothing, and making sure you follow those guidelines. Now we're gonna talk about the temperatures for serving food. Like 165 is our power guide for serving food. That's for reheating, and that's for meats, and that's for most everything that we're doing that's hot food. Now there's some lower temperatures for pork and other things, but 165 is gonna be your go-to for hot foods. When it's coming out of the oven, that is gonna be your go-to. Oven or grill or anywhere you're cooking outdoors or indoors, 165. Something's under 165, cook it longer, because that's where bacteria dies off, and that's how you kill the bacteria in the food. And you wanna make sure you're not serving people something that's undercooked or raw or in the temperature danger zone, which we'll cover a little bit later. If something is under those guidelines where it's not cooked properly, we introduce what's called foodborne illnesses to people, and that's what we don't wanna do. And egg dishes as well, like doing breakfast, make sure your eggs are at least at 160. And make sure you use a thermometer. I don't know if that's my next slide or not, it's not. But thermometers, there's digital thermometers. And I wanna cover thermometers really quickly because with digital thermometers, those are the go-to right now for checking the temperatures on food. We used to have the mercury thermometer, it's kind of iffy and it takes a while, and you gotta do ice cups and make sure it's at 32 degrees and you gotta calibrate it with the tool. We have digital thermometers now, so that's what we're utilizing in this day and age. So make sure you have a good meat thermometer that's digital, and you wanna have alcohol swabs for that thermometer. Each time you check the temperature for a food item, you want to make sure that you wipe that thermometer with the alcohol swab each time, because if you, yes?
just would a cup of lightly bleached water be significant to that?
No. The solution for thermometers is gonna be alcohol swabs. You know, same as they use in the hospitals when they stick you, take your whatever, they use it to clean the bacteria and broke the bacteria off of you. Alcohol swabs are your go-to for checking temperatures on thermometers, because say for instance, if I utilize a thermometer and I'm checking something that's raw right now, because I just wanna know what temperature is it, and I stick it into the meat's not ready, it's at 145. I don't clean that thermometer and I go back and stick it, and it's like, that bacteria is on there from when it was raw. So now I'm contaminating my meat. So each time you check an item with your thermometer, you need to alcohol swab it, and that kills the bacteria, germs, everything else, and you're not cross-contaminating, you're not getting someone sick. So those are the guidelines for that. And there's alcohol swabs you can buy online. I have a few of them myself for the job that I do and things like that. But yeah, bleach isn't really your go-to because you don't want to contaminate somebody with bleach, you know, because that's going into food as well. And
I just asked because I've worked as a bartender and like at the job I have now, we do outdoor kitchens. But we have like in our dish setup, our very last thing is just like slight water, but with like a tiny bit of bleach. And when I like
that might be your
like,
sanitizing
Yeah.
procedures,
So
because
that's
we have our
fair.
wash, we have our rinse, and we have our sanitizing
Yeah.
process.
so that's why I
And
was-
we actually buy sanitizer where I work, because we have 3-sink method for cleaning items.
yeah,
And we don't use bleach for cleaning the food service items because of the fact that we might overdo it.
Yeah.
And that can kind of poison people, because
Yeah,
the
we
bleach
have a
content
very-
can be too high.
yeah, there's like a very specific.
Yeah,
amount
there's
that
an
we
amount
put
of
in.
contaminants, yes.
What's the difference between the sanitization of checking the temperature versus other touch sanitization?
Well, bleach, we all know can be fatal, because of the fact that it has a high content that can be poisonous to the body. There is a sanitation, or sanitizer that is used for food service only, and it has a lower content contaminants. And it's safer to use for items you're gonna be utilizing when you're cooking and using food. And I grew up in the South where they put bleach in everything, and literally, you get poisoned from that. You get sick from it. It's not the best method of sanitation. That's why sanitizer was invented, because it sanitizes your utensils and everything you need without giving you too much of the actual ingredient that kills off the bacteria. Because if you get too much of that, you kill it off yourself at some point, you know? So it's not good for the body. So we kind of steer away from bleaching right now. We kind of stick to using food service sanitizer. And I have some of that. I got that from like Sam's Club. They have like a big thing of it. You can utilize that to sanitize items, and it's a lot safer than bleach, because bleach is kind of, sorry guys, bleach is questionable. My grandma used bleach on everything, including the bath water.
What's the cost of sanitizer?
It depends on the amount you want and where you get it from. I can't really pinpoint that, but you can research it online. I think Amazon may have some. The one that I bought from, I think it was Sam's Club back in the day. I think it was around $30, but it's a big one. And this was around the time where everything shut down and we were going through our pandemic phase. So I purchased that to help, you know, sanitize things that I was utilizing at home for my kids, because kids are, sorry, y'all know, gross. And when they're at home and you gotta feed them lunch, dinner, breakfast, snacks, 17 snacks, and they're out of school and school's online for them, you gotta be safe with them too, because you don't want them to get sick. So yeah, I utilized, there was a sanitizer called, I forgot what it's called, but it was through Sam's Club, and I still have it. It's like a gallon. And I only use like maybe a quarter of it for them, but it also tells you, you know, like what items you can utilize to sanitize products with. Like if you reuse straws, like if you guys have metal straws and stuff like that, that's something you wanna sanitize, because, you know, straws collect bacteria and things like that, and you can't, you know, just run it through the dishwasher and be like, oh, it's okay. No, it needs to be sanitized. There's a method, there's a 3-sink method, there's a wash, rinse, and sanitize process that helps to eliminate bacteria. All right, so our next slide is this pretty picture.
Wonderful.
it just tells you basically what temperature you should be cooking at for different food items, and, it's a guideline. But like I said, 165 is always gonna be your safe zone for meats. And, it pretty much covers, you know, what we should be doing as far as, ensuring our food is at a safe temperature. And, one of the, I'm sorry, next slide, please, for the holding temps. This is just something you guys can reference as you're cooking. But holding temps, after cooking food safely, managing the temperatures for service is important. So this is like after you've gotten this stuff out of your oven and you wanna transport it, you wanna feed people, you need to understand what temperature is safe to serve for your, I would say, your customers or your patrons or the community that we're serving. Hazardous critical control point, we call that HACCP, it's basically, it mandates monitoring food throughout service to ensure it's within proper service temperatures for hot and cold service. Bacteria growth is rapid when food falls below or above standards for hot and cold service. And we never want to leave food out without refrigeration over 2 hours or without warming devices. So it's telling us right now that proper holding temperatures for hot food is going to be 135 or above, and the proper temperature for holding cold foods is going to be 41 degrees or below. So if anything within that time frame drops below or goes above, it's no longer safe to serve. So if we're going out in the field of feed, we need to have a thermometer, we need to have gloves, we need to have a way to sanitize our hands, we need to make sure our hair is secure, hygiene is proper, and we're monitoring food as it's being served. Because one thing we don't want to do is think that, oh, I made this hot meal, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna serve for 3 hours in the desert. And you know, it's a hot meal, but if you're out there for 3 hours, temperature is dropping. And some foods are considered potentially hazardous and dangerous to people. So we don't want to make people sick by not understanding and following those guidelines. And we'll come back to that because there are highly potential foods that can be hazardous. Rice and chicken is one of them, by the way. Rice has spores that are created within it, bacteria-wise. If it's kept at room temperature too long, it can actually be one of the super potential hazardous foods that can harm people. So if you're serving rice, it needs to be a shallow pan. It can't be in something. You can't come out there with a tub of rice this high. Because guess what's going to happen? In the middle somewhere, the bacteria and germs are going to start creating itself. Spores are going to create itself. And the heat is going to get to it. Because we're in the desert, by the way. So it's going to get people sick. So we don't want to utilize that. Chicken is already hazardous because of salmonella potential. Like even when you buy it from the store, if you don't wash your chicken, treat it properly before cooking it, and monitor the temperatures on it, it's going to get people sick. It's one of those foods that is highly potentially hazardous for our community. Seafood is as well. Like we don't serve seafood in the heat and in the desert because it's one of those things where you can't keep it cool or keep it warm long enough. And even if you do keep it cool and warm enough, the atmosphere is going to make it hotter. Did you have a question?
Yeah, what about turkey? Like,
Turkey is well, is good. As long as you cook it at the proper temperature and you monitor the temperature danger zone. Any food you can serve within the temperature danger zone, but the thing of it is you need to know how many hours are you going to be serving? Do you have a warming device to keep this food at the right temperature? Are you checking the temperature constantly to make sure it's within serving standards, which we have that for holding temps. So you can refer back to this for holding temperatures, that this is the temperature this should be for service. And if it falls below that, you can't serve it. That's the mentality for all foods that you should have. That way, you're not potentially getting someone sick. I'm not saying don't serve chicken, don't serve rice, don't serve seafood. I'm saying if you're going to do those things, because they are at risk faster than most foods are, just make sure you're monitoring it. That's why we have something called HACCP, which is Hazardous and Critical Control Point. We serve hundreds of Marines on base. I work in a mess hall. I work overseas feeding Marines and sailors and soldiers. We have to write down every time every however many minutes, 30 minutes or so, what the temperature of the food is, and if it's time to change it out or remove it because it's not safe to serve. We have to have heating devices to keep the food warm. We have to have stuff on ice or in a cooling device to keep it cool. We can't just take things out in the atmosphere and just hope for the best because people can get sick, because bacteria rapidly grows in these environments, especially us being in the desert and especially in the summer. So we have to be safe with that. And ready to eat foods, even sandwiches, aren't always safe to serve. You have to wear gloves. You have to make sure you're not cross-contaminating or contaminating that food, because it doesn't even get to go into a cooking process to take the bacteria or the potential hazard off of it. So those are things we have to watch out for. So I covered holding temperatures. Now we're gonna go to sanitation. I highly recommend you guys get binders, get these little nice things, that way you can just save them. For sanitation, cleanliness of the service area, like wherever we're gonna be cooking at. If you're cooking outside, make sure your grill is clean, make sure every equipment item that you're touching is clean. And make sure that you're utilizing clean utensils, because there's sometimes where you might use one utensil, like this is for my meat that I turned on the grill and I'm gonna go serve salad. That's cross-contamination. Every single item has to have its own utensil, not cross-contaminate by utilizing more than one utensil for several things. You have to have one utensil for each item. And if you're serving something ready to eat, wear gloves, because people are gonna be possibly eating something that could potentially get them sick. If your hands aren't washed, not wearing gloves, people will get sick. So designate utensils and serving dishes. That's like if I'm serving mac and cheese. If I run out of mac and cheese and I'm like, oh, the rice is ready, let me dump the rice in here. Like, no, you don't do that. You want to make sure each item has its own container so that no one gets sick from the possibility of cross-contamination, because each food is different. Mac and cheese has dairy in it, which can potentially get people sick just based off of if it's too hot or it didn't reach the right temperature or whatever. So you have to make sure you're doing that. And then the trash area in the restroom, that needs to be established. If you have a facility or an area where you serve food, even if it's a home, if they need a restroom, they need somewhere to go throw away trash. It needs to be far away from where you're serving food. And I won't say far, far away, but at least a good 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 feet away from where you're serving food at, because you don't want that cross-contamination happening where trash is getting involved with your food area. Airborne does exist with germs and things like that. So we want to make sure that's away from where we're serving food. And there's an area designated for trash, there's an area designated for food service. I've fed Marines in the field, which is like going out. I fed Marines on the side of the road, and literally they broke down the side of the road. I was the driver, but I was the feeder. Somebody was driving, I was the feeder, coming in to make sure they ate a good hot meal, because they could have got an MRE that day, you know. But I still had to follow guidelines for transporting the food. And transporting food is basically keeping it at a safe temperature and make sure that you are sanitized, your hands clean, and that you're serving with clean utensils, and that you're monitoring what you're giving out. All right, our next slide is going to be on prevention. This one is very important. Prevention would be if you're sick and you know you're sick, do not serve, because you're putting others at risk. We just came out of COVID, and everybody knows how important it is if you're sick to back away from the public, because you don't want to contaminate the public with your illness or their illness or whatever. You want to make sure that if you have symptoms that, you know, are like diarrhea, nausea, fever, these symptoms are severe to our public health because it's very contagious. Anybody who has these symptoms, if you have that symptom that day and you're trying to do something for the public, just say, hey, you know what, I'm sick, I won't do it, cannot do it. Because you're gonna help the public more by staying home than you will showing up to handle food. So if you have those symptoms, do not handle food, not try to cook or help the public. And then we have our basics. We sneeze, we cough, we go through those things. So if you're sneezing, coughing, walk away from the line or wherever the food is, walk away from it. Don't sneeze over there, cough over there, wash your hands, change your gloves. There's another rule of thumb where like you put your hand here, it goes here and down instead of it spraying where you're serving food at, because you don't want that to get in people's food. So there's a rule of thumb for these things, because we all cough, we all sneeze, we all go through that. That's a normal type of element that we go through. So how to handle that is important. So you don't want to do that near the food, you walk away. Sometimes you see me run, because I have to go sneeze, I know it, I'll run away from wherever I'm at serving, because I don't want to contaminate anyone, or get anyone sick. And so what this guy is doing in the picture here, he's doing this right over somebody's food. There's people who will do that, but you can't do that as a public service, and to help others, you're actually gonna get them sick doing that. So we don't wanna do that. All right, our next slide is gonna be on cross-contamination. Next slide.
Oops, sorry.
And this is something I already kind of covered when I said never use the same utensil for different food products. If I'm serving salad, that set of tongs is for salad only. I'm not gonna go turn chicken with it that's barely done and get chicken blood or chicken bacteria on it and come back to the salad with it. You need to have designated tools for your food. And then washing your hands, changing your gloves. You need to wash your hands for at least 20 seconds. The rule of thumb is to do the ABC song in your head. Make sure it's warm water or hot water as hot as you can stand. Lather up, rinse well on each side. And if you have nails, which you shouldn't for certain food, clean under your nails. Some places they have nail brushes, or you can buy your own nail brush, clean under your nails if you have nails on. And then if you're wearing acrylic nails, which are the go-to for beauty, y'all, sometimes wear the acrylics. Put on gloves to cover your acrylic nails, because the last thing you want is that ending up in somebody's food. And then changing your gloves after working with different food products. I've seen people who think that I don't want gloves, I'm safe, and they'll put together an item, like they'll put together a fruit salad or whatever, and then they'll use these same gloves and they'll go over and they'll put together a chicken salad or something. And they're touching both items, but each item has a difference in bacteria levels or what it could do to potentially harm another food item, because this food item has to be a lower temperature, this has to be at a higher temperature. So you can potentially cross-contaminate others when you don't change your gloves and wash your hands. I've had a Marine who was making meatloaf once, and meatloaf is messy meal. You're handling raw ground turkey. She's making turkey meatloaf. And we have a rule. It's gather all your ingredients, measure out your ingredients, have everything there so you don't have to move around. But she's walking around with these gloves with meat all over her hands. And she's, oh, sorry, I forgot, I need garlic. And she's touching a garlic container. Garlic container now has all this raw meat on it. So the next person who potentially goes up to grab it, they may be wearing gloves or not, but now they have the bacteria of a meat product that could potentially be hazardous to others, because this person did not wash their hands, change their gloves. Every time you leave your station where you're working and cooking at, wash your hands. I don't care what it is. It could be, hey, I sliced bread, now wash my hands, change my gloves. I'm going over now to make sure the chicken is ready. I'm gonna open the oven and check on the chicken. Just make sure after each thing you do pertaining to a different item of food, that you wash your hands, you change your gloves. You cannot keep on gloves and think that's a safety net. Gloves are contaminated. They get contaminated just as our hands do. And our biggest safety is washing our hands and keeping our hands clean and changing our gloves. So it can't just be, oh, I'm just gonna change my gloves. No, wash your hands, change your gloves. That's the process. And to remove and secure all potential contaminant objects such as jewelry, hair, false nails. So we're gonna secure our hair. We have a lot of hair. Pull your hair back. Make sure you have a hairnet on. If you have facial hair, make sure you have the net on. And You have jewelry. Don't wear jewelry and bracelets and rings and all these things when you're preparing food, because if something breaks off and you don't recognize it, that's in someone's food. That's a hazard, choking hazard, a contaminant, a safety hazard. So those are things you don't want to do. You don't want to cross-contaminate just based off of the fact that you want it to wear your jewelry when you're serving food. Because your whole potential is to serve the people safely. You don't want them getting sick based off of things like that. And you're gonna wear gloves for ready-to-eat foods. If you're making sandwiches, guess what? Everybody says sandwiches are safe, right? They're not. Sandwiches can be contaminated due to the fact that we're not washing our hands, we're not handling it with gloves, and if we're doing meat, like lunch meat sandwiches, those have a potential where if they're not held at the right temperature, we develop listeria, which is a bacteria. We develop all these different contaminants. So when you're utilizing, making ready-to-eat foods, you still have to wear gloves because these foods aren't gonna get cooked. They're gonna be served directly. So however you handle that food, someone's gonna get, sick by it. And for cutting boards, if we have to utilize them, we don't want to cross-contaminate. If you're cutting raw meats, you should have a cutting board designated only for raw meats, nothing else. You do not slice up roast beef that's bloody and then turn around and be like, hey, I rinsed this off good, now I'm gonna chop the lettuce. You're not gonna do that, because if that board isn't completely sanitized and washed properly, there's a good chance there's bacteria living on it that will get into whatever vegetable you're gonna be making. And that's gonna get someone sick, because vegetables even if you're cooking them, they don't get cooked to a higher level where bacteria can actually die or be killed off. So we wanna make sure we're not doing those things. And as we leave our designated area where we're cooking, meaning if I'm cooking and I'm on duty and I need to go to the restroom or something like that, make sure you're washing your hands, following your guidelines for how long you're supposed to wash your hands, hot water, soap, at least 20 seconds, at least the alphabet. Do the alphabet in your head if you have to, because that guarantees that whatever's on your hands is coming off and your hands are clean. And then you can go put your gloves on and serve people. If you're a smoker, you're not gonna smoke and come back to your food and serve food. If you're taking out trash, you're not gonna take trash out, come back and serve. Every time you leave a food service area, your hands need to be washed and clean. You cannot serve food under those conditions. All right, so we have a guide for contamination, prevention, and sanitation. And it's very cartoonish, but it gets the point across. You're not gonna mix your chemicals with your food. Like if you have cleaning sprays and things like that, keep that in a separate area. All the things that you utilize for cleaning, keep it like in a separate area away from food. You wanna make sure your food that's ready to eat is stored above raw food. So if we have a refrigerator or something like that, and I don't even know if we're gonna get that or not, but if we get the access to a commercial refrigerator, what you wanna do is have your ready-to-eat foods at the top, your beef or whatever in the middle, your chicken at the very bottom, because that's the most highly potentially hazardous food. In that order. You don't want to have your stuff like in a refrigerator and like you got chicken dripping down on your fruit and your vegetables. So storage is important in how you do it. You want to make sure that food is covered when we're serving it. If you're serving it out in the desert to the public, we need to have lids on our service, on our food, because number one, we have contaminants that are airborne, we have contaminants that are insects out here, we have all kinds of things that can go wrong when we're serving food, and we just don't want people to get sick. So make sure it has a cover over it. And when we're doing dry storage, if we get to a point where we have something like a storage area for dry foods, I know we all said that, hey, dry foods are important as far as helping the public, like giving them oatmeal or giving them cereal or giving them whatever. That needs to be 6 inches off the floor, off the deck, because guess what? If it's any lower, insects, rats, all those things, they're gonna contaminate that food. So storage houses, if we ever get one, 6 inches off the floor. And then cleaning and sanitizing, we covered that earlier, but all equipment, grease, sink method, hot water, soap, sanitizer, dry rack, making sure things are clean when we're giving it to the public, and make sure utensils are clean when we give it to the public. Those are things that we need to do. All right, next slide. This is one that's super, super important. It's foodborne illness. Now, we need to talk about who's gonna be affected the most by foodborne illnesses. And it's gonna be our most vulnerable. It's gonna be our elderly, people whose immune systems are compromised, and children under 5. They are at higher risk of dying or suffering severe illness from mishandled foods. Next slide is going to talk about symptoms and different foodborne illnesses. We talked about salmonella a little bit, but it's a bacteria caused by food handlers who do not wash their hands. They use contaminated utensils or equipment and do not cook or hold food to proper temperature. And symptoms regarding this can be chills, fatigue, fever, abdomen pains. E. coli is another virus that's caused by undercooked food, unpasteurized dairy products, and contact with feces from underwashed hands. So yes, we can get super sick from this. Shigella is another one. That can be from flies too. I didn't even put that in there, but it's a bacteria caused by eating or drinking contaminated water or food, potentially found in salad, macaroni salad, shrimp salad, fruit salad, rice, lunch meat, strawberries, milk, pudding, beans, and raw oysters. These are, Shigella is like very serious. It has some really bad symptoms. So these are things we want to avoid. I want to also put in there that rice develops a high bacteria rate if not kept at proper temp and served in a shallow pan, 2 inches or less, because bacteria spores grows rapidly at room temperature. And chicken has a high potential rate of raw prep to contaminate consumers with salmonella. It's important to wash chicken, use gloves, and make sure it's cooked 165 or higher. All right, our next slide is about food transporting. All right, so keeping hot food hot and cold food cold is paramount. 135 degrees Fahrenheit or above for hot food as you're serving it, not cooking it. But if you already cooked it and you're serving it on the serving line somewhere, you need to maintain the temperature of 135 or above. If it falls below 135, you need to pull it. You cannot serve it anymore. It's not safe because at this point it can grow bacteria. People can get sick. If you're serving anything cold, and I know we don't talk about cold food a lot, but even a salad, like if it's under 41 degrees, don't serve it. Certain things have to be on ice, certain things have to be stored properly. So if we're not storing things properly, we cannot agree that people aren't gonna get sick. And even with serving fruit and vegetables, fruits, ready to eat, wash the fruit before you give it to someone. Handle it with care, handle it with gloves, because it's something somebody's gonna consume immediately. It goes straight to their body, and if your hands aren't clean, guess what? Whatever's on your hands is getting in their body. So even with serving food that is ready to eat, the potential hazards are even higher because they aren't able to ward off the bacteria growth or the situation right away. So that's important. Also, when we're transporting food, we need to map out a timeline, because if you're cooking food somewhere here, like say we're gonna cook it over at the, what is it, Plaza, yes, Freedom Plaza. We're gonna cook it an hour in advance and someone's gonna pick it up in 30 minutes and serve it. We gotta make sure, hey, it is fresh, it is hot, it is 165 and above, and as they're transporting it, does it take them less than an hour to get to where they're going? And will it remain 135 and above? And these are just small pictures of what you should have. If you're serving cold food, you need a cooler. If you're serving hot food, you need something insulated that keeps food hot. And you need a thermometer to make sure you're checking that temperature throughout the time frame that you're serving. So have a thermometer with alcohol swabs to clean the thermometer after each check. Make sure foods are served at proper holding temps. And I did put out a chart in here somewhere where you can check, you know, hot foods need to be at this temp, cold foods need to be at this temp. And then you want to make sure foods are served at proper holding temps, and hand washing or sanitizer is provided during service for the guests, because even though they're, being served, they're in compromised situations, they still need to have clean hands because they touch something, somebody else comes behind them, you know, you just don't want that chain of contamination to happen. And last but not least, Safe Serve certifications. Safe Serve certifications for food handlers is a requirement to serve food to the public and a certain capacity to ensure public health safety. Because like I said, this is a biological warfare, whether you guys believe it or not, you can take out a whole entire community if you contaminate them or get them sick. So you need to know how. Everything that I covered is brief, but if you log into the website for San Bernardino County Gov, it will teach you how to do food handlers information. Basically, you'll be able to qualify to serve food safely. And that Serve Safe card, guess what? You're legit throughout San Bernardino County to serve food. And if they want us to get something above that because we're dealing with the homeless or whoever, we can look into that further. But if you have Serve Safe certifications, you can handle food, you can cook food, and you can serve food safely. But you have to know the guidelines for how you're gonna do it, when you're gonna do it, and follow the information that was given in this briefing today. Anybody have any questions? Yes, sir.
I want to thank you for making this presentation.
Yeah, very much so.
You've also installed a lot of feeling, yeah, I'm very proud of it. Hang on to. I want to thank you, I need to leave out.
Okay, well, thank you for attending, and thank you all for attending, and, we gotta thank the Marine Corps. Shout out to the Marine Corps because they're the reason why we have these printouts today, because I was able to speak with some people on base and they were able to say, you know, for this cause, you know, they will basically fund it. It's like 14 pages, color print. So that's why I advise you guys, as you have this information, get a binder, get you a couple of, they sell them at the Dollar Tree, these little cage protectors, and it'll give you a reference for how to handle food when we get ready to go to war and help the community and do what we gotta do for the community. We're all equipped, because we all have to be equipped to do what we're doing. We can want all day to make a difference in this world. We can want all day to do the right things, but we have to train for it. We have to be equipped for it, and we have to have the knowledge and understanding on how to do it. This is a stepping stone for anyone who doesn't understand or know. This is the stepping stone for it, and our community does need us to step up and to step in and help them. And we are at a place in our lives where we can do a lot more than we think we can. And if you go and look on Skid Row, they got a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. So I challenge everybody today to look up how to get your safe handling food card. It's not expensive at all. It's like what? A few dollars.
$15 at most.
Yes, get that so that you can have the certification in case the state or the county comes along and be like, what you doing? Where's your blah, blah, blah. And then permit wise, we can look into if we need a permit, because we're serving a group of humans who are compromised in our situation, because sometimes it's sensitive and they want a permit or they need whatever, but we are equipped to take care of this. We're not compromised by this economy and what's going on in the economy. We have to become the community and grow and become who we want to be to help our community, you know? So I challenge everybody to just go out there and do it. And I commend you. I forgot your name. Yes, you bring your babies to the meeting. I commend you for that.
They follow the rules in my house. I mean, my background is in housekeeping, so I'm not a cook, but I've done.
But that's
all
still service to the people. It's service to the people.
I tell them, like, after because they help me in the kitchen, like baking and everything. After everything we do, I'm like, wash your hands, go wash your hands, wash your
Yes,
hands.
and I see how well behaved they've been in the meetings and everything. So you're doing a great job. And you're not just a mother. You are a community member, and you can contribute just as well as everybody to your left and your right. So I commend you for being here, and I thank you for everything, for you just showing up and even bringing the babies and being like, hey, I just want to bring my babies. Because I know there's times when my babies would have been running rampant around here. They wouldn't have been as well behaved. So yes.
Washing your hands, or really washing your hands, is like, it's a freaking art form.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, I think it'd be good to have a few minutes, tutorial on how to wash hands.
We can do that as well, because it takes more than 2 seconds of tap water that's cold and a little bit of soap. It has to be water that is at least as hot as you can stand it, and I told you guys, you say your ABCs while you're doing it, that's how you clean your hands, and then you feeling a little bit uncomfortable, use some sanitizer, and then put your gloves on, because that's your extra protection. Gloves don't alone keep people from getting sick. Gloves are a contaminant as well if you're not changing them. So that is my briefing to you all, and if anybody has any more questions, please let me know.
When I wash my hands at home, you know, I go like that, I go like that. But it's important to go like that, your nails, and then in between here twice, and I get the thumb and then the wrist.
Yes, sir, that is the proper way, because a lot of people, even my kids, I see them, they'll go wash your hands, or I wash my hands, and it's like 2 seconds and they're out, and it's like, you didn't kill no bacteria doing that. So yes, you do have to make sure the water is hot enough, you do need to make sure that you get under your nails if you have nails. That's why it's recommended for us to have short trim nails and things like that, because getting under the nails is important, because bacteria can live under your nails. And if you don't have like the nail brush or whatever, the nail brush helps. It is important to keep our hands clean while we're serving food, because we do want to ensure that our public is safe, and we don't want this falling back on us if we try to do a good deed and now, 75 homes have fallen because we serve on bad food. That's a reality. And I know that reality as food service in Marine Corps, like I said, that's a biological warfare. I could take it out of battalion just by me. If you guys don't know what a battalion is, that's 1,000 Marines. I could have taken out 1,000 people that came in my child line because I didn't wash my hands or change my gloves, or ensure my Marines were doing what they were supposed to do, and ensure they follow guidelines and regulations for food service safety and handling. So I'm more than equipped. And like I said, when it comes to transporting chow, I know you were saying you want to transport chow, you have to have insulated containers. You have to follow guidelines for temperatures when you're out there. If it falls below this temp, I can't serve it. You gotta know your timeline of how long you're gonna serve. You gotta know how long it's gonna take you to get from point A to point B. If you're gonna be like somewhere far, do you have equipment to handle keeping food warm at safe temperature for that long? That's the thing that we have to start looking into, because we want to make sure people are being fed, taken care of, especially in this environment. And it's about to get super hot. So if we're serving hot food, it better be like on fire for the people we're serving, because we don't want anybody to like get sick from it just getting under the temperature danger zone and bacteria growing. So
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I was thinking, just thinking about all the different, like protocols and the, like keeping things clean, and thinking about like what types of things we would need like in our budget for this group. I mean, I'm not really
For
that
our
way minded,
budget?
but I'm just thinking like all the different supplies we would need. But my question is about, like, I know for changing gloves, but like for apron and stuff like
oh
that.
yeah, we
Is
can.
there protocol to change or
There-
like
there-
plastic or?
We could do that, because, you know, for aprons, we could do regular aprons. We would have to have a backup apron, because you know how aprons get dirty. We can wash out our aprons, somebody can be designated to wash aprons, we have volunteers, people who could do that. Or we could have the ones that you put on and they're disposable, they're kind of wasteful, but do that as well. But, we can establish how we want to do this. We don't have to have a major guideline. It could be, hey, we want to do aprons and we want to send our aprons to laundry every time we do a service. And we want to at least have 2 backup aprons. Like if this one gets dirty, I got this backup, you know, we could establish that. And then as far as equipment goes for transporting food, we can find out how to invest in getting equipment to allow us to do that. But yes,
I was gonna say, I went to like, an event workshop at the city council,
Mhm.
and I know like there's like grant money that they will give out for something like this. You just have to go and like talk to them in the office. They seemed really willing to help with also permits and stuff. I don't have I don't have the packet with me right now,
So,
but
you-
it's accessible.
I think what she's talking about is, she's talking about the T-bid. Or was it the PAC, Terrence? They did a workshop recently.
Oh, I didn't hear the question.
Oh,
She was saying something about grants being, available for.
I think the PAC did a workshop.
oh yeah,
So-
well, PAC, no, yes, I know what you're talking about. That's not what I'm not talking
Oh,
about,
okay.
but I do know, they're giving a grant out between 500 to 1,000 for
Yes.
artists.
Yeah. the podcast.
But the city, like I was at City Hall for this other workshop that, yeah, there was people from PAC there, but, they were just talking about, the city itself gives out a certain amount of grant money, so I'm sure if this was pitched in a certain way by whoever's leading this, you know, maybe some grant money can be put together so supplies can be bought. Or to just piggyback what you were talking about, so it's money that can come into this group that will help with like the overall objective of giving our unhoused neighbors.
So-
At first I wasn't inclined to go for a 501c3, but I am now. I'm convinced that it's an absolute necessity for the grants.
So I'm one of the city council members.
Okay.
And, the city does have around $50,000 that was supposed to be allocated, out of our homeless fund. So we have a homeless fund, and we're gonna use that money for a navigation center
Okay.
and for showers.
Cool.
And it was gonna be mobile showers. It was gonna be run by the, Morongo Arch. And they're no longer able to do that.
Oh.
So, I put it on the agenda. It is a future agenda item right now, to revisit those funds. And so there's a lot of people that are eyeing those funds right now. And, for different, you know, it has to be, it's earmarked specifically for homeless programs. And I know some people have some ideas about what that looks like. Maybe it's a workforce program. It definitely could be something like, what you guys are talking about too. But I will say that, the biggest thing we can do is figure out a way to get the city to, use those kitchens. The city has 2 kitchens. Hmm?
I was saying we need to start utilizing those kitchens if they haven't been utilized yet, because, even a feeding program where we can make the food there, and then we have people to safely transport that are qualified to do that, we do that, but we need to, address that, because it's a sitting facility, not, even the colleges that you in, they have culinary arts. And I actually, spoke with the college, because I was supposed to be. But like, they were like, oh no, like we got, you know, someone else who can work on, right, yada, yada, so somebody else did that, but I was like, at the end of the day, are you guys cooking in the facility? And you know, they have Bruce's Kitchen down there in the street, and they feel like that people have been working through Bruce's, but,
Sorry,
sorry.
I'm gonna let you finish, but I interrupted.
They have Bruce's Kitchen, but I think it got bought out by someone or something, but they were training, you know, individuals within the school to start utilizing that particular area of work service, but if we have that facility, we should be able to work with it, yes, sir.
Okay, I want to interject some information I have here. Someone did some research for us. And, this comes from Environmental Health Service, San Diego County. And, a micro enterprise home kitchen operation. That would be, until we have a kitchen to cook in, that's a certified, inspected. We can prepare food in the home. All the safety guidelines that she has given us today apply, with the exception that we cannot cook meat in the home. We can do tons of other things, tons of great sandwiches, and tons of recipes that can be made, that can be delivered, pasta dishes and so forth. And there is available good quality chicken from Starkist and other manufacturers. And if your recipe calls for chicken, it's already cooked, comes in a package, and it's the recipe. And it doesn't, so we're not allowed to cook in home